Hi guys, so excited to have you here. So I'm probably going to run this panel by asking you stories. Okay, is this better? Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys to tell stories about how you grew your apps or how your partners or clients grew your apps. I think the best way we can all learn is from stories. And when I was building my app, I really struggled a lot with growth. That was always the biggest problem. So I'd love to hear more from you guys, the experts. So maybe we can start off by each of you going around and telling us a little bit of background and also what you do day to day. Maybe we can start with you, Dinker.
Sure. Can everybody hear me in the back? All right, great. So guys, I'm Dinker. I'm coming up from San Francisco. I work at Twitter. I manage our brand advertising products. Previously, I used to be at Google, where I ran mobile local search and turned that entire product around. And I've spent some time at Amazon and in other industries as well. And in terms of stories, I'd love to at some point in this evening talk to you guys about the mobile local search story at Google and how that entire market is extremely critical for Google and how we worked very hard to win back the customer from a lot of other local services and local information providers. So would love to get into that when the panel proceeds. Nice to meet you all.
Hey, how you guys doing tonight? First, can I just say, I love Vancouver. This is the first time I've been here, and I honestly think this is probably one of the most beautiful cities I've seen in my life. Okay, that said, my name is David. I've been at Lyft for about 2 years now. I lead the acquisition team, so we basically do anything on the driver or passenger side to acquire in new markets. Previously, I was at Hotwire, led their partner marketing program, and have been having a very data-oriented background. I'd love to talk a little bit about how we basically have figured out how to find the right metrics to optimize to, and how that has actually helped accelerate our growth at Lyft.
Hi everyone. As Lloyd said, my name's Alexander Pay and I work for PayPal. You'd be amazing how much fun that is. Literally, I've been there 4.5 years. I get this every single time. This is my second time to Vancouver because I love it so much, and I genuinely am contemplating relocating both myself and PayPal to Vancouver. So I see that and I raise it. I look after market development and mobile for PayPal and for Braintree. Does everyone know PayPal? Does anyone know who Braintree is? Okay, cool. Is someone waving it at the back, or are you just waving for fun? Okay, cool. And I'm focused, literally about everything is about growth, and we live and breathe growth at kind of PayPal. We're a 15-year-old startup. I think we still claim to be that. But we're still a multi-billion-dollar org that lives and breathes by growth. And so looking forward to having a chat about it.
Hey everyone, my name's Joe. After about 15 years at Amazon and P&G, I decided to take it the next step and actually moved up to Vancouver a whopping 2 weeks ago. So I'm a veteran of this city by now. So I joined a company here that's similar 15-year startup. It's called BuildDirect Technologies, and we're focused on disrupting and completely rebuilding the home improvement category. And so it's been a lot of fun so far. I lead marketing and communications, and I'm excited to tell some of these stories as well on what we're doing at BuildDirect and some of the fun that we had at Amazon. At Amazon, we did a ton of experimenting, so we failed plenty of times, and there's lots of good stories in there. But great to be here.
Awesome, guys. Okay, so talking about experiments, Joseph. Let's start with an experiment that you guys run that you think was very, very successful to drive growth on mobile. And it can be either something that you did for your own company or maybe for one of your clients. So maybe, Dinker, let's start with you. It can be either something at Twitter or with Google Local Mobile.
An experiment. How many of you use Google search? All right, figured. So one of the most important things, and this is going to sound bloody obvious, but one of the most important things when you pick a local destination is what other people are saying about it. And for the longest time in Google search, we had no information about that as we would list local search results for you. And people had started to stop coming to Google for a whole range of local use cases. So when I was running the product on the side where I was desperate for growth and regrowth because I was losing these people, we essentially had to think about completely revamping various aspects of Google search so that we would show actual information that people wanted. And it was just something as simple as that, which could lead to a turnaround at that scale of, several tens to triple-digit millions of dollars for us. Because think about it, there's about 4 or 5 types of searches that make money, and local is one big one of them. And if you lose that, the search for a keyword like a pumpkin or Justin Bieber doesn't really make Google that much money. So it was a very important category for us to win in. And the takeaway is that in mobile, true to the use case, you have to really respect what the user wants to do. And the user often wants to do some very, very simple things. They don't want to do fancy things because there is a different type of computer for that. So the key thing that we saw was that the experiments that focused on enabling extremely simple, high importance, high prevalence, obvious use cases were the ones that consistently won us loyalty, users, and repeat visitors. So that was something that I thought was pretty stunning in how simple it was and how impactful it was. Like reviews. There were no reviews if you wanted... Oh, thank you. There were no reviews if you wanted to check out a restaurant like Aura. You couldn't see any reviews in Google. Hours would be wrong. The opening times would be wrong. So there'd be very basic things. Like we were focused so much on the precision of getting the GPS coordinate right, which the user didn't care that much about, right? They cared about some content so that they could make a choice. So that's just literally some very simple things that you can do to literally win back hundreds of millions of clicks back from competitors.
So at Lyft, one of the things that we're really hyper-focused on is how do we basically optimize all the different touch points of the funnel. So you kind of think about it, in a given city, we're trying to activate tens of thousands of people, in some cases even more than that, in large metropolitan areas. And so figuring out how do we actually optimize each one of those touch points can be a fairly big challenge. And so one of the things that we found kind of early in our growth cycle is at some point you kind of reach this peak point where you hit kind of your maximum for what you can see on organic and referral growth, and you're just kind of seeing incremental growth, and then you have to actually start paying for your growth. And so I think typically what most people go to is they start with doing their online channels. So you do your Facebooks, your Twitters, your other channels like that. And that's great. But what we are struggling with is how do you basically get people to engage and pay for your product when you have no brand awareness? And so one of the things that was really interesting about this is we kind of stumbled onto this, but we actually did a test where we actually paid for a much higher premium media inventory. And because we were looking at all the different touch points and how all the channels are interacting with each other, what we noticed is if you looked at the performance of that premium channel, in this case it was basically online video through a major premium outlet, it was costing us maybe 5 to 6 times more what we would typically pay for impression, something like $20, $30. And so the performance of that was, I think, something in like an order of magnitude more. And so if you were a smart marketer, you'd look at that and you'd say, we should definitely cut this right now, and this guy is like crazy. But what was interesting is we actually looked at what was happening to all the different advertisements in addition. And so we actually saw our brand search traffic increasing. We saw all our CTRs increasing at the same time too. And what we basically started to look at was blended CPAs on a per market basis, or what's your all-in CPA essentially. And so I guess kind of going back to it, I feel like there's a lot of times this conversation about multi-touch attribution, or like how do those different touch points assist each other. But really you can do simple testing to actually understand how do you make people aware of your product and educate them, and how is that impacting your other KPIs through your other channels. And oftentimes you can actually drive your blended CPA much lower than what you would typically see through doing that.
So we're probably lucky enough that, and I was talking to someone about it earlier, that, you know, at a company like PayPal, we can throw money at just about everything. And we've been around for 15 years. And we talked about the fact that, you know, companies like Uber have been super successful with referral programs and bonus credits to a certain degree. We really kind of pioneered that in the online space. You know, all of our early acquisition was, I'll give you $5, you recommend D, he'll get $5. It went round and round and round. For us as an actual company, and you know, we're pretty big. We've got 165 million consumers in 204 markets. Trying to get people to like download the PayPal app, you know, which if you don't know is available on iOS and Android. Please download it. But it's a situation getting people to download it. So for us, acquisition is actually quite easy. Actually then getting them to activate is super tough. And one of the biggest reasons we struggle with it is for many, many years, and we were one of these tech companies who we put out a mobile app when mobile apps were super hot. There was no actual reason for it. We were like, oh, we've got an app, it's cool. What can it do? Realistically, next to nothing. I can check my PayPal balance. Guess what my PayPal balance is? 0. You know, I can check my transactions. When was the last time I bought something on eBay? You know, it was like, I don't know, my mum bought something on my eBay account recently. Like, it literally was. And so we looked around and we went, why is there an actual reason for a consumer and one of our engaged consumers to have the app? And the first thing we looked at was building the ability to actually shop and kind of have like discovery inside of our app. And we saw a huge uptake with that. The next simplest thing which got us another massive uptake was, again, PayPal's always been about email and password. If you've got a PayPal account, it's like, I was going to give you mine, but let's not talk about mine. It's an email and it's a password, right? Putting that on a mobile device is a pain in the ass. So we just literally pivoted very simply and said, why don't you put your mobile phone number in and a 4-digit PIN? We got a massive spike. And recently we also implemented Apple's kind of Touch ID. We've seen another massive spike in that. So these kind of barriers to entry is from literally just the application itself. For a company like PayPal, where we're not an everyday need. We're not, right? You know, you're going to use your TD, your RBC, your Visa, your MasterCard, you know, almost daily to do everything. PayPal is, I think on average, we're about a 1 in about 18 or 19 days someone transacts with us. So making sure that it's super easy for them to access their PayPal wallets by not having to remember any of these stuff and being able to use biometrics has seen a giant spike for us in kind of that next step of activation.
Yeah, so I think when I think about mobile, I always just try to think about how can we use this magical device to reduce the distance between wanting something and having something. And sometimes that's a product that gets shipped to your house, and sometimes that's access to information or to content. It was a helpful framework for us in a couple instances where we needed more mobile engagement on Amazon, and so something that we tried that actually worked, and we tried a bunch of stuff that didn't work, which I'm happy to talk about too. But one thing that did work was creating Amazon Shorts. So 30 to 60 second, mostly 30-second videos that just brought the product to life in a really highly produced, engaging way. That was great at launching new products. It was great at just having people understand how they could do more things with stuff that was in their home, and it drove engagement through the roof. And another thing that on mobile specifically, the other thing that I've found that is really helpful on mobile is to connect as much as possible mobile with email. So our ratings and reviews, which I think you were talking about, is kind of the lifeblood. Something like over 90% of people trust customer ratings and reviews. And so the more of those that we get, the more powerful the experience is. And so we used email, embedded email and mobile to allow customers to, without leaving their email, put a rating and review on a product that they've just purchased or just browsed, and put that rating and that comment in without kind of getting redirected in a bunch of different ways. And we saw ratings and reviews spike like 400%. And same with browse not bought or browse abandoned. When you have that on mobile and you compare that up with a powerful email combo, you're probably going to get a lot of traction. So those are two things that work for us.
Okay, so speaking of things that didn't work, maybe we can start with you, Joseph. I think we all learn the best by learning from what other people tried and the things that didn't work for them. So maybe we can start with you, since you just mentioned that about things you tried that failed.
I'll keep the list to just two, but it's a long it's a long list. Hey, the one thing that I really screwed up was the launch of a wedding registry on Amazon. I thought, gosh, this is a pretty intuitive thing. You use Amazon a lot, and if you're in Williams-Sonoma or something and you're looking for a product, what if I put the functionality on your mobile device to be able to scan it and automatically add it to your Amazon wedding registry, potentially at a better value with free delivery? No brainer, right? Well, it was a total failure. I think we had something like 7 people use it. 4 of them were Amazon employees. And I think what we did wrong was we just underestimated the kind of the brand affinity people had and the association they had with Amazon. When people thought of Amazon, they thought, well, this is a place I go to if I'm out of shampoo or if I'm out of diapers. I don't know that it's the place that I want to put something that's super important for the most important day of my life, my wedding, that I want to send out to my friends. And so I don't think that we thought through how customers were going to associate sending that Amazon list out to their friends and family. So the team kind of went back to the drawing board after that. The other thing that I've never been able to get right on mobile is every time I do a campaign and I want customers to shoot a photo of their experience or upload a video, I'm always underwhelmed at the upload volume. And I think unless it's like a lifestyle play, like shoot a picture with you and your pumpkin spice latte from Starbucks, I think those tend to be more successful. But if it's show me a successful renovation you've done in your home, or a great recipe that you've done, either the quality of the images that we get uploaded is low or just the volume is low. So I've just not been able to figure that out on mobile yet.
For us, it was really on mobile. It was about messaging. So again, PayPal, we were built on kind of 3 kind of pillars of safer, faster, and easier. And to be brutally honest with you, we stumbled into mobile very late in the game. We're now a mobile payments heavyweight behemoth. We processed just shy of 50 billion in mobile payment volume last year. 1 in 5 of our transactions globally now come from mobile. And we literally sat down as a management team only sadly about 4 years ago, and kind of stumbled onto this, that the concept of not having to put your all of your details, your 16-digit card number, your shipping address, and everything like that was actually super strong on mobile. But when we first took that to market, we tried to pitch this kind of thing around using PayPal on mobile is safer, faster, and easier. Latching on to safety, like millennials just laughed at us. Like they literally just honestly, the feedback we got on Twitter, like check out my Twitter sometime, it was absolutely hilarious, the mockery got for that. Like to a certain demographic, safety means nothing whatsoever. The concept of being faster and easier, that like incredibly resonated with them. But we spent millions and millions of dollars investing in safer, faster, easier, and we literally were losing people straight away with safety. It's like, oh, PayPal is safe, we've forgotten. If we'd use PayPal because it's super goddamn easy, we would have had everyone. Trying to tell people it's It's safer because its PSI DSS1 is just ridiculous.
So how many of you have used Uber, Lyft, or any of those services? So a couple people. So one of the difficult parts about the business is you have two-sided marketplace. So you have drivers and you have passengers. And both of them get pissed off really easily. On the driver side, if they're not busy enough or they're not making enough money, well, guess what? They're gonna turn off the application. And on the passenger side, if you don't have a ride that's 3 minutes away and it's not for a good price, you're gonna go somewhere else. So one of the things that's really difficult when you launch a new market is how do you spark that market and do it at a fast enough rate where you can get to that 3-minute ETA and then also get the drivers utilized to a point that they're going to stay retained. And so we kind of approached this a couple of different ways when we were kind of growing as a business, and they both led to kind of interesting results. So originally what we did is we were like, you know what we need to do? We need to make sure that there's always supply there. So we actually paid drivers an hourly rate to go sit on the road and be ready for rides. It was great, somewhat. But as you might imagine, there's tons of ways that you can gain that. And the other issue is you're not doing anything to incentivize on the demand side because you're spending so much money trying to pay these drivers to stay on their side. So we're like, all right, well, let's just go the opposite way. And so what we did is we launched a new market and we said, let's give everyone free rides. They're going to take rides, the drivers will stay busy, and we'll launch the market very fast. Great idea, right? Well, turns out when you give people free rides, A, people talk about it, but B, then your demand growth looks like this, whereas your supply growth can really only ramp like this. So you can see quickly where that'd be an issue. So basically 2 weeks into that then, you have an issue where every single passenger is trying to get these rides essentially, and they can't get any availability because everyone wants to use the service. So long story short is, through spending a lot of money and a lot of painful lessons, we basically learned how do we basically tie together the right utilization, ETA metrics, and basically how do you pair operations and growth together so that they can basically have the right level of supply and demand at any given point for any market stage. And so it's incredibly hard to do, which is, I think for anyone in the business, whether it's UPS, FedEx, or Uber, hats off to them because it's very difficult to do on a large scale basis.
Experiments that didn't work. It's a long list. Let's get started. So creatives. There was a while in the display industry where everybody was talking about cross-screen experiences. Your mobile ad must match your desktop ad. You must surround the user. The ads should function seamlessly across screens. Everything should be HTML5. It should be inside apps, interstitials, this, that, and the other. Flop. And the reason was that at scale, to do this kind of custom development is just extremely expensive on mobile, number one. Number two, ads that are very rich in media, but that'll take forever to load, are not going to ever get seen by any user. And number three, advertising that is onerous for brands to produce, because if they're running a $100,000 campaign, they can't spend $5,000 to $10,000 on the creative. It just doesn't make sense. So where I've seen success on the creative in terms of what not to do is if you're going for something very rich and immersive, go for something that is video. And that is something that universally consumers like to actually engage with in advertising. And if you're going with something that is not super rich and immersive, then go for certain templates and standards that are simple, get the message across, where the copy is straightforward, where the user knows what they're going to get, and that's it. Like don't put too much sparkle in mobile creatives unless it's a full-on video. Would be my. And I've seen lots of brands and lots of advertisers, lots of people looking for mobile growth fail at that because they feel that the texture of the creative somehow correlates with the number of clicks, and it doesn't.
Oh, those are very insightful failed experiments. So last question. At Branch, we work with a lot of different apps and we see one of the biggest struggles is, especially when they're starting out, balancing how to drive organic growth and focusing on organic channel versus paid. So I think I'd like to hear from each of you, how do you think early stage apps and brands should kind of do that balance between organic and paid, and how do they think about that?
So the best way to think about it and model organic or paid growth is to understand what value you're actually creating for the user, whether they come in through a paid channel, a heavily marketed channel, or an organic channel. It almost doesn't matter. And then you say, okay, my organic growth, if you were to just plot out the target user bases for your services on some sort of a map or some sort of a Mary Mecca, which is like a bar chart with a lot of rows, then what you say is, okay, where am I organically succeeding and where am I not? Where am I succeeding in my promoted campaigns and where am I not? And where is my return on overall capital as a company? Because even to drive organic growth, it takes a lot of effort. You should always measure the cost of that. And for driving paid growth, it takes a lot of effort. You should always measure the cost of that. So where is my return on capital as a company being most effective? And then don't fool yourself with number of downloads. Don't fool yourselves with first month actives. Don't fool yourself with number of app opens. Like actually ask yourself, okay, this person logged in and did these 20 steps and completed these 5 goals, and therefore it created X amount of value. So almost look at the number of user goals that were completed given the value proposition of your service, and then tie that to the overall return on capital of both the organic and the paid entities, and see whether you're actually creating value or destroying value. If you don't do that honest analysis, and you look at other proxy metrics, be they number of cost per installs, cost per app, other things, or like number of clicks in or number of opens or things like that, in all the companies that I've seen that are early stage, they tend to miss something and either recalibrate or pivot at some point in the future. Now, what I just described doesn't need to be that analytical if you have a very intuition-oriented leadership team, because you can kind of sense that you're actually creating value or not, right? You can talk to 20 customers and figure that out. You can feel that as a founder. You can do that in a variety of ways, but always keep your eye on 2 things, organic or paid, and whatever the metric may be. What is the total capital expended at the company level, and what are the goals that the user has for your service that were finished? And try and do the balancing act between that.
Cool. So I think it's always difficult, but the way we kind of look at it is, what's the capital investment? What's the time investment? What's your limiting resources on that? In most cases, right, you have probably both are a limiting resource to a different level, but for a lot of startup companies, capital is a huge part of it. So I think, truthfully, organic's where you always need to start off. And a lot of the baseline for what you're doing in terms of organic acquisition tactics is going to feed into what you're doing for paid later on. I think taking a step back, what you need to be looking at as well too is, what is your customer life cycle? And then what are the metrics that define the customer life cycle? Oftentimes people will rush into trying to grow their product without even answering the question of, how do you even measure, is this successful or not? Is this actually driving real revenue or not? And it's a problem I've seen at other startup companies. It's a problem that happened at Lyft. It happens to everyone at different stages of growth. And what will happen is, once you actually start putting this organic or paid program into gear, if you don't have that analytic infrastructure in place and you don't actually have those goals in place, you're going to be in a fairly shitty situation 3 to 4 months later when you realize that you don't actually know how to evaluate the success of what you did. And so I'd say, before you even start tackling this organic pay question, get your model right, get your forecast right, get your app, website, whatever you're doing, instrument it properly. That said, from our standpoint, things that we invest really heavily in is, what are the first consumer touch points that people will see when they discover Lyft? So those are things are the App Store, This is the website homepage. That's typically what people go to see, right? And I think a lot of times people think of things like the App Store screenshots as not things that you can really quantify and improve, but there's actually pretty dramatic gains that you can see just from doing simple testing. And we've seen in some cases up to a 2x increase in our organic install rates from just doing simple testing. And so I would challenge you to think through what is all those funnel touch points that you're not paying users to get to, and how can you optimize them? Because when you actually start doing paid investment, you'll be able to reap all those gains for that early infrastructure work that you did.
When we talk about paid versus organic, I'd love, like some part of me would love to say it's organic, but for us it's 100% paid. You know, when you type in, I want to pay this, pay online, pay, you know, we spend huge amounts of money, but then there's obviously all of our competitors, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, TD. It becomes a costly game, but our numbers spike when we up the ante, when we go into it. You know, I guess one of the biggest things, if you've got data, if you have even, you know, minor amounts of data, look at it. You know, for us, we know that if we have customers who use our P2P product, they are like 3 times as engaged as our typical customer. They're a great one to be targeting to download things like our mobile app to increase that engagement. And kind of going on to your point before, you know, you've got the acquisition, you've then got the kind of activation. But for us, before we get to retention, it's all about engagement. You know, getting someone to sign up to PayPal by giving them money, quite easy. Getting them to activate, so taking that money, quite easy. Getting them to kind of repeat spend before we get onto this kind of, you know, concept of retention. To me, retention is almost like a bit of a negative word. I know it's not, but if you're talking about retaining a customer, it's like you're thinking that they're at a chance of churn or risk. So it's that real step of engagement. You know, how do you get them through there and monitoring that?
Yeah, so I think, I don't want to repeat anything that's been said, but some of the things that I see apps and mobile appreciate are trust metrics. So just people love trust metrics. So how many ratings and reviews you had, how many downloads, how many users, what are some customer comments that you can blast out? People want to know that, you know, they're either catching a wave or catching momentum, or that, you know, someone else has already vetted this for them, and it's constantly an underutilized asset that I think brands and apps have. I think the other underutilized is word of mouth. I was talking with a construction app for contractors the other day. They're up to 150,000, 160,000 daily users, more downloads, of course, and they haven't spent a single dollar. And they did it just by saying, gosh, on every job site, there's 4 to 5 contractors that are there. And so if we can just seed this sucker, these guys are going to talk to the other 4 people, and then they'll go to another job site and they'll talk to the other 4 people, and they'll be cool, and it's something to brag about. Hey, look how smart I am. I'm using this app and this technology, and you know, it's through the roof. And you know, the only other thing I'd say is just you know, you may need to kind of step up to app or even step around app. And I love some of the momentum that's building on invisible apps right now, and I think it's really awesome where that's going to go. And I think we're just getting started on it.
Well, thank you, guys. Lloyd, do we have time for a few questions from the audience? Maybe 1 or 2 questions. Does anyone have questions for our panelists?
A bit more geared at David, I guess, but how do you guys manage, I guess, looking at that data across all the different kind of channels? Because, I mean, you know, you got potentially marketing on web, and then also, you know, through YouTube or on your own mobile platform or other mobile platforms. Like, how do you guys manage all that stuff?
Yeah, I'd love to say that there's one solution out there that can do that. Truth be told, we hired some really good data analysts, and we spent a couple 90-hour weeks, basically instrumenting every single touch point that we could. What's great is most of our users are mobile app users, so you have device IDs that you can basically track and persist right. It's a little bit more of a challenge, right, if you're Expedia or Hotwire where you're relying on cookies, and it's much more harder to basically track over a longitudinal period. But suffice it short, we built a lot of in-house custom solutions to basically track and manage this stuff.
Cool. Maybe one more question.
Thanks. So my question is, what are your thoughts on mobile as something you treat standalone for marketing and for dev, or mobile as a part of everything that you do?
So we're soon launching a marketplace, a full marketplace for our home improvement company. And we're designing it all on mobile. And as a principle, we're not, and this is batch uploading thousands of SKUs with sometimes sophisticated, sometimes unsophisticated vendors in the thousands. And we're just going to design this on mobile and commit to it because, and every piece of software that we design moving forward is going to be designed on mobile because we had Google in last week, and every time they come in, we ask them to just reconcile their predictions for mobile versus the actual, and every time they're underestimating the growth of mobile. So as fast as you think mobile is going to accelerate, it's probably 3, 5, 10x that. I think like as a whole society and people have difficulty thinking about exponential growth. And probably because they're just looking at the UX of mobile sites right now, which is by and large pretty crappy. So we're 100% in on mobile, and that's how we're going to lead everything. If we can expand it from there and add some functionality from desktop, then bonus.
Okay, I think that's it. Please join me in thanking all our panelists for the awesome insight.